After investing my money in the same way for the past 3 years, I'm officially changing my investment strategy. Now, I've been using a Robo-Advisor, Wealthsimple Invest, to invest since January 2021, so almost 3 years exactly to the day. And I chose this method at the time because I was still pretty nervous about investing my money on my own, but I did know that I wanted to start investing larger amounts of money into passive investments, specifically ETFs, without paying someone else really high fees to do it for me. Now, a Robo-Advisor was a really good starting point for me because I could set up my profile, choose a risk level, and then decide on an amount of money to have automatically sent from my checking account to my investment account every month, and then that's it. I could have literally never looked at it again if I didn't want to, which was really nice because it made it easier for me to get started but still build up my investing knowledge and confidence over time while all that was kind of happening in the background. Now, I did make a few changes to my investment portfolio strategy, I guess, over the last 3 years. The biggest one specifically was that I upped my risk level over time. I ended up at an 11 out of 10. Basically, that just means that my Robo-Advisor, Wealthsimple Invest, invested in 100% equities, so stocks, and no bonds or fixed income at all. Now, I still love the idea of a Robo-Advisor, and I'd recommend it over not investing at all, of course, but even paying someone else to do your investing for you because it's just not necessary, at least not most of the time. But I realized in November of last year that it just wasn't the best option for me anymore. Now, let me explain that. Wealthsimple Invest has a fee of 0.5%. If you compare that to the typical 1 to 2% that you would pay a financial advisor or a fund manager to do your investing for you, it's a lot less money. I don't know if 0.5% sounds like a lot less than 1 to 2% to you, but it really does add up, which I'll talk about in just a second, and it was starting to feel like a high fee for me. So obviously when you have less money invested, 0.5% per month is going to be pretty small amounts, but then as your money grows, the amount of that fee does too. So for me, as I started to approach having $50,000 invested, I started seeing the monthly fee coming out of my account grow to over $200 a month, which just felt like a lot of money because it is. So on top of seeing those higher fees with the Robo-Advisor, I also know that I'm in a place where I'm more comfortable investing on my own and using what's called a do-it-yourself or DIY approach, where I would pick the ETFs that I'm investing in and then I'd buy them myself on a monthly basis. Now, I'm going to talk more about what that's going to look like moving forward, but first, let's look at what my Wealthsimple Invest portfolio results have been for the last 3 years and where I left that portfolio off. Okay, so last year when I did a video on my 2-year Wealthsimple Invest portfolio results, at the time I had exactly $34,756.19 in my account. Now, the last day that I had my Wealthsimple Invest account was November 21st, so I guess I technically had it for 11 months this year before I shut it down, and at the time that I closed down my account, I had $49,841.20 in there. Now, I did invest a little bit more money in December, actually a decent chunk of more money, but that never made it into my Wealthsimple Invest account, so we're just going to look at what the results were for the Robo-Advisor right now. Now, if we look at my actual portfolio holdings, you can see the specific ETFs that the Robo-Advisor was investing in for me. Now, the thing about this Robo-Advisor, Wealthsimple Invest, is that you don't actually get to pick your investments, you just choose your risk level. So like I said before, I had that 11 out of 10 risk level. I chose to just invest in equities. So the Robo-Advisor picked ETFs that just had equities or stocks inside of them, but I didn't actually get to choose which ETFs those would be. So here are the ETFs that they had chosen for me and how they were performing. Again, they change sometimes over time, but these are the ones I specifically had at the end when I shut down my account and for most of the last 12 months specifically. So the first equity type was US equities. That made up 32.6% of my portfolio. I think it was technically 33, but at the exact time of shutting it down, it was at 32.6. There were 2 US equities that the Robo-Advisor bought on a consistent basis, VTI, which is the US total stock market, and then also QUU, which is specifically US large cap stocks. Those ones were performing the best out of the entire portfolio at the end, over the average 10.2 return, right? So it was 15.3 and 15.4% respectively for those 2 different ETFs. So that was about a third of the portfolio. I was also invested 25% in international equities, specifically ZEA, which are full of a lot of large and mid-cap stocks across the globe, I guess, internationally. That one was performing at 5.1%. Then we've got the emerging market equities at 17.2% of the portfolio. Again, just one ETF here, EEMV. That one was actually a negative return of 0.4%. Then we've got the Canadian equities, the 12.4% of the portfolio. Specifically, it was just QCN, which is Canadian large cap stocks, think like banks and stuff like that. That one was only up 0.2%. And then the last section or equity type was global equities, which was also 12.4% of the portfolio. The stock that was bought in there was GLOV, and then that was actually a 9.3% return as well. So obviously you can see the US equities were doing the best. Everything else kind of all over the board. Now, in my 2-year portfolio results video from last year, I touched on the fact that what's nice about a Robo-Advisor is that you don't have to select your investments or your funds. Like I mentioned before, the Robo-Advisor does that for you. Now, if you're new to investing, that's really nice because it gets you started without you having to actually know or understand what funds or stocks you should be investing in. I think that was something that would have really held me back earlier on, is that even if I was trying to learn about all of these different investment options, there's a lot to look into. You can kind of get that analysis paralysis and feel like you're making the wrong choice. So by just giving it to the Robo-Advisor to do and select for you, and you don't even have to think about it, it's great and it gets you to start investing. Like I said before, I still think that's awesome. But the stage I'm at now, I've actually started to form opinions and thoughts on the different ETFs and investment options that I was invested in and the ones that Wealthsimple was picking for me. And I wouldn't actually necessarily choose the same ETFs that Wealthsimple Invest chose. It's not that they're specifically bad. There's nothing wrong with them. In fact, they're totally fine. And maybe you in your own research would think that they're exactly what you would select. But for me, they're a little bit more globally diversified than I personally want. I kind of just mentioned when I was going through all of the different ETFs that I was invested in. Obviously, the US market ones performed the best, but they were a pretty small percentage of my portfolio at only 33%. So that kind of brings me into the DIY approach that I'm going to go with from now on. Okay, so that's how my portfolio is doing after 3 years, and I'm happy with the growth I was seeing, but I think with the tweaks I'm making, I'm going to both save on fees because I'll be paying $0 in commission fees, which is great, and I should also be seeing greater returns in the long run. So what I'm doing moving forward is using Wealthsimple Trade to invest instead. Now, this is Wealthsimple's DIY platform or trading platform, and on here you can buy single stocks, ETFs and other funds, bonds, basically all individual investment options all on your own. Now, if the reason you wanted to switch from the Robo-Advisor to a DIY platform was just to save on fees, I could have in theory switched and bought all the exact same ETFs on Wealthsimple Trade instead. So I could have basically just shut down my Wealthsimple Invest account and then rebought the exact same one. So what is it? BTI, QUU, ZEA, EEMV, QCN, NGLOV. I could have just bought those on Wealthsimple Trade with the same percentages, which would have obviously involved a little bit of math, but you could definitely do that. Now, that's not what I'm doing because, like I said before, I also want to be investing in a higher percentage of US equities. So I'm instead going to be investing in a one-fund solution called XEQT. Now, XEQT is actually made up of 4 different funds within it. It's ITOT, XIC, XEF, and XEC, if I'm getting those right. But instead of having to buy those 4 funds individually, instead they're all packaged up for you and you just buy XEQT. Now, it does cost a little bit more than it would if you were to buy them all separately, but what I like about this is it makes it, again, a little bit more simple. You're just buying one fund on a monthly basis, and I think it's important to keep it simple, at least still for me at the stage I'm at right now, to have that success long term and actually stick to this. I'm actually going to pull up my laptop for a second and show you guys the XEQT fact page here so you can see what it's about a little bit. So first thing is the performance. So since it was created, it has a 9.88% overall return, which is great, pretty much in line with where I was at before. But the most important thing I want to show you for now is the exposure breakdown. So this is the breakdown based on geography. So as you can see, and like I mentioned before, I was invested in specifically 32.6% US equities with Wealthsimple Invest. In this portfolio, it's 45% US equities. One big difference is that there's actually a higher percentage of Canadian equities in here. Again, we're in Canada, so that's specific for us. If you're not in Canada, maybe you'd want to look more into something that's equivalent to where you live. And then obviously there's some global diversification after that too. The biggest reason that I like this one is that there's a much higher percentage of the US equities specifically. You can also see here too, they show the breakdown of the asset class. So it's 99.78% equities, basically 100%. There's always just a little bit in the cash reserves as well. So the switch that I'm making to sum it all up for you guys is going from investing with Wealthsimple Invest, which was a Robo-Advisor, and investing in these 6 funds, to now using Wealthsimple Trade, which is a DIY platform, and just investing in this one fund. Now, making the switch was actually pretty easy. I would say that I was emotionally a little bit stressed out because it was kind of a crazy experience selling my portfolio for the first time. Like, to me, it felt like I was going from having $50,000 invested to $0 invested, which technically I was, at least for a little bit. But other than the emotional piece, the actual physical transfer process was pretty straightforward and simple. What What was nice about going from one Wealthsimple platform to another is that I could just click a few buttons and have my entire TFSA transferred, so I didn't actually have to sell anything off myself, and it also didn't negatively impact or affect my TFSA. I literally just had to set up the transfer process and then wait, I think it was 5 business days for it to go through. Now, once the money was actually officially transferred from my Wealthsimple Invest TFSA into my Wealthsimple Trade TFSA, it was just sitting in the new TFSA in cash. So it was still within my tax-free account. It never left that account in general, but it was no longer invested in anything. It was just sitting there doing nothing in cash. So the next step for me was to actually set up my Wealthsimple Trade account so that I could reinvest and get that $50,000 chunk of money back in the market again. Now, when it came to setting up my Wealthsimple Trade account, they actually have some really amazing new features. At least I didn't know that they existed, so they've got to be at least somewhat new, but it makes DIY investing a lot easier. I was really excited about this because I was still a little bit concerned of going from this super easy passive set it and forget it method with the Robo-Advisor to buying the investments myself, but let me explain what they have because it's really awesome. So first of all, I can still make it so that $2,000 every single month gets transferred from my checking account to my Wealthsimple Trade account. So I can just set that up one time and have it happen on a monthly basis. But what I'm extra excited about is on top of that, I can actually set up what I'm pretty sure is called a recurring buy, but I can make it so that I buy XEQT automatically through my Wealthsimple Trade account every single month. So I don't actually have to go in there and do it myself. I just set it up one time with a set amount of money, and Wealthsimple Trade will buy XEQT for me on a monthly basis. So it's basically like having a Robo-Advisor still, but you're just choosing the investments this time. The other thing that they have available now is dividend reinvesting as an option. Now we're going to talk more about this in a future video actually, in case you don't know what that is, but if you do know what dividend reinvesting is, then it's really exciting to have this as an option too, and having all these different features all on a DIY platform just makes it so much easier, and I'm actually really excited about it. Now, I decided that instead of investing the entire $50,000 into XEQT at one time, I wanted to kind of gradually do it. When you're investing one chunk of money, you can either take a lump sum approach or a dollar cost averaging approach. Now, the pro to doing it all at once is that you have more time in the market, right? You're getting all the money invested, so you get to benefit from that entire time period. You're just getting it invested earlier. On the other hand, by doing it in chunks over time, you're potentially getting a better buying price. So for example, let's say I took a lump sum approach and I bought $50,000 worth of XEQT on one day. It's possible that the day that I buy it, XEQT's price is particularly high. Whereas if I broke it out over a number of days instead, the average price might be decently better and somewhat lower than that one higher day. Now, on top of the $50,000 that I transferred from one account to this one, I also actually added another $12,000 into my investment account too for my end of year bonus. So it's actually a total of about $62,000 that I need to get invested again. I decided that I'm going to do $10,000 a month over about a 6-month period. So 6 months from now, in June of this year, I should be fully invested again. And on top of this, I'm still going to also consistently invest my regular $2,000 a month too. Now, we're definitely going to do another video updating you guys when this process is fully done. So in about 6 months, I guess. But for now, that's the plan. So 6 months from now, I'll have invested, I guess, a total of $86,000, which is the $50,000 that was transferred, the additional $12,000 plus $2,000 a month for 6 months. So that's what should be in my Wealthsimple Trade account in June 2024. And on top of that, my Wealthsimple Invest profile and account is fully shut down and done with. So that's a wrap on my Wealthsimple Invest portfolio results after 3 years and my switch to Wealthsimple Trade instead. Let me know if your investment strategies changed up at all recently, and also any questions you have in the comments below. Then of course, make sure you check out this video next, and we'll see you next week with a new video.